Welcome to another edition of the Chiefs Outsiders podcast. This is one that I am truly excited about. There's nothing more fun than a matchup between division rivals who are both playing well. And that's the case when the San Diego Chargers come to Kansas City for a game. And if anyone is out there thinking that I should call them the Las Vegas Chargers, is that where they're the Los
That's close.
Alamos? Look, you win a game, I'll remember what to call you. Until then, we've got the Oakland Raiders and the San Diego Chargers. You go win a playoff game. We'll call you by the right name. Till then, what do you think? They are the Chargers a real threat to Kansas City this week?
I think they are. Which they did not look super impressive offensively against the Raiders. I mean, Herbert looked good, and I think he's going to have a great year. I really do, as much as I know it pains you to hear that.
Okay. Josh Herbert.
We hate them both. Justin.
Win a playoff game, and I'll remember your first name, Josh Herbert. That was an accident. I'm not disrespecting him like that. Justin Herbert is a top 5 NFL quarterback. Definitely, probably a top 3 NFL quarterback.
I don't know if he's proved that yet, but people are putting him there because he has shown he can do it.
Yeah. Now, the question is he a personification of the San Diego Chargers in that you will always be impressed by his losing performances? Or is this someone who's going to have a resume of winning important games?
Last year, it kind of looked like he might have been the first.
Because you cannot watch him play without being impressed. Incredibly strong arm, the right amount of mobility. He's tall.
It seems like he has a lot of the face of the franchise quarterback attributes of, being a leader and being a guy people can look to and a stable presence.
We've also seen him have like an NFL record number of consecutive fourth down completions, which I would say maybe a complete one on third down, and you want to have to
He tried to will them into the playoffs though in that week, last game of the year.
And you're talking, when you say that he almost miraculously willed them to victory, you're talking about against the Houston Texans last year, whenever they got blown out, and he threw the pick six, right? That tanked their season. That's when that was willing them to victory by not converting first, second, or third down all those times.
Anyway.
I'm the king of fourth down.
But we're talking about the Chargers this week.
We're gonna get serious here in a minute. But right now, what I want to say is that, to my knowledge, there's no rule stating that you can't convert on one of the other downs, that you can only do it on fourth down. So everybody was real impressed with that game but me. I mean, he's done a lot of good things. That wasn't one of them. Choking the season away doesn't get you any special trophies from me.
They don't even make trophies for that.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. So anyway, rant aside, the guy's pretty good.
Yeah, and he, like you said, he's got all the tools. He's got the arm and the legs, and he can do it. And most of us have arms and legs, but he can do it.
Okay, so let's give the man some credit. You're starting an NFL team right now. You can pick any player in the NFL to start it. Let's say we're all going to pick a quarterback. Mm-hmm. You could make a case for Aaron Donald, or that Parsons kid is pretty good.
He's ridiculous.
There's some impressive non-quarterbacks. But let's say we're all starting and we have to pick a quarterback to start our franchise. At what point are you picking Justin Herbert?
Considering age, which you have to, because that's a big part of it, I think there's a clear pecking order right now, and it's based on everything we've seen to this point. It's Mahomes, Allen, Herbert.
Yeah.
Because the ceiling on those three guys is so much higher than anyone else not named Aaron Rodgers. It's ridiculous.
And that's exactly what I would do too. I would take him as the third pick if I'm starting a franchise. That is high praise. But I also might have last year taken the Chargers as the third best roster in the NFL. And then they choked when it mattered and didn't make the playoffs. And what we're going into this season with is this feeling that the Chiefs and the Chargers were the same last year. Mm-hmm. And they weren't.
No.
Okay? Until your team is led by a coach or a quarterback who's won a playoff game, there's an asterisk by your name.
So, with everything we've said, if really getting to this football game, you look at, like you said, last year there were struggles for the Chargers in a lot of games that they should have won. But the Mahomes and Herbert have played 4 times now, and all 4 games have been good games in the fourth quarter, late, because he can play and he's going to keep them in it. And that, I mean, we all remember that second game last year, the Travis Kelce walk-off, but I mean,
I liked that one.
It was really good. But Justin Herbert has been his best against the Chiefs and against Patrick Mahomes because that's what you expect a star quarterback to do. So I think we should expect to get his best shot on Thursday.
Maybe we should wear alternate uniforms. But if maybe we wore like Texans uniforms, he'd come out and throw a bunch of fourth quarter picks, or some Broncos uniforms.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, I'm going to poke holes in my own argument. When you've got Andy Reid, who's won 14 or however many division titles he's won in his career, 9 conference championship games, 3 Super Bowl appearances with a victory. That's the guy I'm betting on. Mm-hmm. But there's always someone who eventually comes along and is the next great coach. And the fact that they didn't win anything their first 2 years doesn't prove Brandon Staley's not that guy.
Right.
So, by any other measuring stick...
Staley was only there last year.
I thought he had been there 2 years.
No, the first year was, what was his name? Play
Joseph?
caller. No, it was Lynn.
Anthony Lynn?
Anthony Lynn, yeah.
Okay. That's how out of touch I am. So he's only been there 1 year. And so you cut him some slack, and you say, sky's the limit. But until you do it, I'm not picking you.
Right.
So let's talk about the impressive things. I've been all negative because
Because you guys want the Chargers.
You want to know why I'm so high energy right now and so negative about the Chargers. Number 1 is they're getting too much hype. You got to win something before you get all this hype. Number 2, this guy just told me about Patrick Mahomes being graded about the same as Mac Jones for this week. I wasted half of our last show talking about it. I'm going to talk about it again. PFF, you got a problem. If you can't recognize that Patrick Mahomes played above average in week 1, scoring 44 points, then you have a problem. And I'm still mad about it. Now, why don't you take over? You talk a little bit. Tell them some good players the Chargers have.
Okay. So, for the Chargers, it's actually Keenan Allen pulled a hamstring in that week 1 game against the Raiders. So, I believe Staley said something along the lines of he's not looking great for Thursday. But unfortunately, Staley did say J.C. Jackson is 50-50 for Thursday. I said unfortunately, like he said he's going to play, but 50-50 it's a lot better than where he was at on Sunday, because on Sunday it was like he's going to be out for both of these games. But we'll see. J.C. Jackson's a really good player. If he's out there, that's a difference maker. Joey Bosa is a stud. We know that. Khalil Mack looked really good week 1. I wanted to believe that he was done being good at football, but I don't think he is.
But the case with an older player is not can they play well once. Julio Jones looked really good Sunday night.
That is true.
How do you think he'll look in Week 13?
That's
Week 14?
There are questions like that
Week
that
7.
are very valid.
But let's give the Chargers defense some credit. Jackson, safety. Gosh.
Derwin James.
James, Bosa,
I almost forgot about
Mack. Those 4 guys.
Stars.
You take the 4 best defensive players the Chargers have, and there's not a team in the NFL with 4 better top 4 defensive guys.
And I'm glad you mentioned Derwin because we talked about on our pregame last week of Budda Baker, and how Travis Kelce would see a lot of him. And I kind of hinted at it that I didn't think it would be much of a problem for Travis Kelce. Budda doesn't have the size to mess with him, and they actually gave him a lot of Isaiah Simmons in that game. But not important. Derwin James is a guy who's going to be on Kelce by himself a lot. He's done it in the past, and he's done it well in the past. He's given Kelce problems, as well as anyone has, because he's still going to be effective. But Derwin James, that's a tough matchup for Travis.
Now, they've got a lot of defensive talent. They held the Raiders to 19. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
They had a C-plus game.
I was going to say they were up 17-3, and then it wound up being close. So,
Chargers took care of business last week, beating a playoff team, and they ran out pretty good on them, and it ended up finishing close. But Chargers didn't win or lose any status from me based on that game.
No.
They did what I expected them to do,
which
is win the game as the better team.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do I expect this week? Before we're going to get into more players. Let's talk offensive players before we do predictions.
So, Mike Williams, assuming Keenan Allen is out, is going to be the guy at receiver. Joshua Palmer is a guy I actually am really high on. I think he's going to be a guy for a long time, and Chiefs fans are not going to like him because he's going to get open a lot. But we haven't seen a ton from him so far. I know he's had a couple of big games, but if Keenan isn't playing, Joshua Palmer is going to get a lot of run. And then again, Chiefs fans are very well acquainted with what Mike Williams can do. If you remember the 2018 year, that Phillip Rivers team that won 12 games, and they beat the Chiefs on that 2-point conversion at the very end, and Mike Williams, I believe, had 3 touchdowns and the game-winning 2-point conversion in that game. So that's a guy who can absolutely change games. And he's also a guy with he's very big, and the Chiefs, McDuffie's not going to play, we assume, so that's the guy you would think would struggle with size the most, but the Chiefs for a long time have struggled with size at receiver. So we'll see how that goes. I genuinely don't know.
Well, I'd say the Chargers are going to probably move the ball and score some touchdowns.
Yeah.
As I'm sitting here thinking about it, you can go name off all the players on both rosters and talk about X's and O's. They have great weapons. They have a great quarterback. And so do we.
Yep.
I like our players better, but there's not a difference on paper. And there wasn't a difference on paper last year. And both games came down to Staley taking a bunch of crazy risk. They only beat us the first time because they made a bunch of crazy gambles and they got them all.
And the Chiefs had 4 turnovers in the first half in that game, which is easily forgotten.
By me just now.
And then
it wasn't easy though. It's taken me a lot of years to gain that level of forgetfulness, but they felt lucky in that. And after that game, okay, so this was the coming out party for this version of the San Diego Chargers. I was about to know what their town name was, and then I was this close to calling them by whatever they are supposed to be called, and then I the game ends. I call this guy, or I text this guy. I said, Staley is fireable. They just won that game because of decisions he should be fired for. Said that guy is going, he's not going to make it as a coach playing that way, because you will lose more games that way than you win that game way. And that played out. I'm usually right twice a year. That was one of them. That he cost them more than he won them by taking all those gambles. And I'm a riverboat Ron kind of go for it on everything. It's easy as a fan to say that.
And I remember that very well, because I know that after you sent me that, I told you he was going to win Coach of the Year. And he didn't. But if they'd made the playoffs, I bet he would have. And the biggest thing, which so much of that was what?
Here's what I must say. You don't become financially well off by buying lotto tickets. You do it by making sound investments. And that's what, look, I still, right now, I like the aggressive, it's an offensive league at this point. I like a lot of the teams are going for it more on certain fourth down and 2-point conversion things. I think there's down 14
Always
and you score, you go for 2. I like that one.
Even though Andy Reid doesn't.
But you don't become a successful franchise based on taking a bunch of crazy risk.
And what I was about to say is, I believe I remember the situation from that game last year, and why so many Chiefs fans were upset, because they went for it on a 4th and 8 when the Chiefs had no timeouts. I believe we were down 4, and they were at midfield. And it was, for the entire history of football, that situation results in a punt. And Brandon Staley said, no, we're going to win this game right now. And then they did it. And it hurt, because we were like, man, we were supposed to get the ball back, and we didn't.
And that's just stupid. Going for it, you got 4th and 3, and if you get it, you win the game. Okay. But you were taking, that play has a 30% success rate. And what that is like little man syndrome. It's being afraid of your opponent. Say, we know we can't stop them. Let's try something crazy. And it's only going to work 30% of the time. Even if you've got, Surfer Joe at quarterback, the next GOAT.
And again, like we talked about in our preview episode of the season, maybe, we don't know, because there's still a healthy level of respect and fear for Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. But I would assume that some of that ridiculous aggressiveness from the Chargers last year will go away with another year of defense for a defensive coach. Because as much as I do think Brandon Staley loves to be aggressive and believes in Justin Herbert and his offense, you don't make it to the NFL as a defensive coach without believing you can stop guys. And, he's going to bet on himself to be able to stop guys.
So, I think the Chargers are a legitimate threat to make the Super Bowl. They're that caliber of team. I still think we're better. And I think we're going to win this game.
What do you got for a score?
We're going to have one more than they do.
I like 34-27 Chiefs. Nail biter. And we're going to go with a defensive stop on the last possession, too. Book it.
It also feels like this is a must-win game. And it's not.
It's not a must-win, but what it is a massive opportunity to have a leg up on the division, because it's early. There's a ton of football left, but we now have the Raiders at 0-1, the Broncos at 0-1, and if the Chiefs win this game, they will be up at least a game on the entire division and have a head-to-head tiebreaker on the biggest threat to win the division.
Yeah, and you know why I want to win? I don't want to listen to any more junk from Chargers fans.
We just don't like them very much.
No. Pretty boy Herbert is... So, if you're a Chiefs fan, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You did not root against John Elway. You hated him.
Still do.
And you can respect someone.
I have no respect for anything John Elway did.
Well, he had no statistical success in his entire career. But it was a different era of football. We're not going down that road.
No, we're not.
But I can respect Justin Herbert and think he might be the greatest person ever. I don't like him. And I certainly don't like... Well, you know what? Why I don't like him? Because I don't like that I listened to a show today where people said he was better than Mahomes. And there is no... You could set out 100 different ways to measure it, and none of them point to him being ahead. And he hasn't had a statistical season that was better at the same point in his career. He's not off to a better start. At this point in his career, Mahomes was already an MVP.
The only thing I will just... The polite way for me to say sure, but he's not that guy is I will give him he has that ceiling comment. Like, he has the ceiling of Patrick Mahomes. Sure. You can dream that maybe one day he'll be as good as Mahomes. But until I see it, he's going to be a tier behind.
How many guys in NFL history have a higher ceiling than Tom Brady?
A couple thousand.
Yeah. Ryan Leaf has a higher ceiling than Tom Brady. A lot of guys have ceilings.
Yeah. At some point, you got to go win some games, right?
Yeah.
Especially the ones
If you lead the San Diego Chargers to the Super Bowl, then now you're tied. And then we can have this as a fair argument next year. Because Mahomes has already done that. Mm-hmm. And he's got a stacked roster. We've got a stacked roster. It's going to be one heck of a game. Usually these things come down to turnovers, and they come down to decision-making at the end. And I think we've got the right guy running the ship.
I like our chances with Big Red and 15. And
all of this said, I'd say we have a 55% chance to win the game because we're only... It's the margin. We're playing the Bills. Chargers are playing the Bills. These margins are just that thin, especially in games that matter.
And that's the thing. We've talked about how good the Chargers roster is, and everyone has talked about how good the Bills roster is, and we believe, and based on what we saw last week, that the Chiefs roster is right there too. After that, I think fourth place, the AFC is so good, but I think the fourth best team in the AFC is probably about half in terms of overall total talent and what you expect from that team compared to those other three. Just, like, if those three aren't, by December, the clear best teams in the AFC, then it'll be shocking.
All right, so, no question about it. I'm taking back what I just said. This is a lock. We're winning this game. I appreciate you watching the show, and we're out.